Good. How's it going today? Excellent. Good to see you.
Hi.
Hi. This morning.
Hi, Wendy. Good.
How are you? Good. How you doing?
Good.
How are you doing? Good. I see you guys are busy, isn't it? Oh, I see you. Nice seeing you again.
Let's wait one more minute. Sure.
These are the best chairs. Really are.
Thanks.
They adjust to however
So
you
we're
want.
playing, folks.
Okay.
How you doing? Thanks.
All right, let's get started. Let's get started. I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is the ad hoc committee called to review the other post-employment benefits trust agreement and also a continuation of our July 24th, 2007 ad hoc meeting. I'm Jane Diggs, and I'm chair of ad hoc. Other members of the ad hoc committee, we have Shay Negerchef and Paul Rotella. Others in the room, we have from Corporation Counsel, we have Diane Rosemar, we have our Director of Finance, David St. Hilaire. Did
Yes.
I pronounce that correctly?
Yeah.
We also have the Assistant Director of Finance, Dan Garrett. We have ex officio council, we have an ex officio member, Councilman Ben Shanisi, and members of the public. Let's just get right into this so that we can review the draft. I know in our meeting in July, I'm looking at the minutes, and the minutes say, Mr. Rotello directed Attorney Pinter and the Finance Department to create a document for the committee to review. And that's exactly what we're going to do this evening. So I'm going to turn everything over to Diane, and then have some questions or also some feedback from the other parties included, and then have some questions from our committee and also some questions from the audience. Okay?
Thank you, Councilwoman Diggs. I know that recently I sent out an email with attachments containing the most recent trust agreement, the City of Danbury Other Post-Employment Benefits Trust Agreement. And I just want to draw your attention to a couple of minor items. We did since revise the one that I emailed, and I have a copy of the most recent version this evening. And I just want to draw your attention to a few minor edits that we needed to make. And basically, it was to change the title to City Director of Finance. And that is on the first page of the trust agreement. Instead of Finance Director, we changed it to City Director of Finance. That change was also made on page 9 of the trust agreement. And then another change that we made, and this was brought to my attention by Assistant Director of Finance Dan Garrett. If you look to Exhibit A, groups covered by OPEB plans, if you look at the second bullet, we made a change from Danbury non-union employees who are eligible to receive the same benefits available to unionized employees. We changed that now to Danbury non-union employees who are eligible to receive post-employment benefits. And we made that change because, I'm sorry.
Yeah, what page was that?
Councilman Rotel. It's Exhibit A, the groups covered by OPEB plans. And if you don't have it, let me give you a copy.
I probably do.
There you go.
It's the fourth page from the last.
Or you
Okay.
can look on to this.
Or is yours the last page?
That's actually, you just passed it. It was Exhibit A, yeah. This is what we changed it to. So let me pass that out so everyone can look on. I'm sorry.
Let me find it for
Pass
you.
that down.
In which line was that?
That's the second bullet.
Danbury non-union employees who are eligible to receive post-employment benefits, okay.
Is that similar to the one, was you faxed on this one here, the all along?
Yes, the only changes we made were to the Director of Finance, and then
Okay.
this other change that I'm gonna talk about with regard to Exhibit A.
Yeah, I've got one, thanks.
If anyone would like a copy, I'll give you copies. So if you want me to repeat that, we changed it to Danbury non-union employees who are eligible to receive post-employment benefits. And the reason for that change is because non-union employees' benefits do not always mirror those of union employees. So this change made more sense. Also, Exhibit B, which is attached to the document that I just passed to you, is the Connecticut Uniform Prudent Investor Act, which is referenced in the trust agreement. It's incorporated by reference. Now, many of the revisions that were accomplished as part of this recent trust agreement were from Natalie Welsh, who was an attorney at Shipman and Goodwin, who we hired to help draft the trust agreement and the ordinance. And of course, she's a pension attorney. She has experience with drafting trust agreements and giving advice on pension matters.
And she's worked with other communities with this.
Yes, and she has actually, that's a good point. She's worked with a number of Connecticut municipalities on drafting the very same trust agreement or a similar trust agreement to what we have.
Shane?
Yes, through the chair, quick question for Corporation Counsel. Do you know what other municipalities she's drafted for?
Yes, actually. I don't know if she personally has drafted for these communities, but when I posed the question to her, what other Connecticut municipalities are in the process of developing an OPEB trust agreement, she indicated that Fairfield, Greenwich, New Britain, Stamford, and Glastonbury. So there are at least 5 at this stage.
Is that it?
That's as far as I know, yep.
Okay. David, do you have any comments or anything that you'd like to add to this?
Yes, I mean, as you can tell, we spent a great deal of time going over some of the concerns that was presented at the last meeting. We tried very hard to address all those concerns, and I think we have with this revised document. We tried to clarify some of those issues that were brought up. And we attached some of the things that might not have been as clear in the original document. Some of them were stated in there, but they just were not very clear. And after the last meeting, we, Diane, Dan and I sat down and reviewed it, and we understood why the concerns were brought up, and then we decided, we'll attach a few things, reference it to make things more clear, and then of course we added a few things to address the concerns that were brought up here. So I think it's a very good, very strong document
Okay.
that we can use as the basis for this.
Good. All right. David and Diane, I'm very, everything's self-explanatory, and I'm happy with it. I have a question to Paul. I know Paul, in our last meeting, and I'm looking at the minutes again. It said that Mr. Wortello would like to see a balance of interest and mission statements, specific qualifications and competencies of the board members, removal of board members and sunsetting of the board after 5 years, including the document. Has this satisfied all of your issues?
Well, a couple of answers to that question. The first one will be, I've gone over the material and I've looked at both the amended document, not the post-amended document, but the amended document and the pre-amended document. And the changes that were made, I'm not an attorney, but the changes that were made sense to me. The cleaning up the language, making it a little bit tighter and more focused, and that's fine. I have no problems with that at all. However, as the chair brings up, I did have a couple of concerns, specifically about both the makeup of the board and the mission statement, but really those concerns flow from the fact that my main concern is the safety of the funds that are deposited into whatever system the authority board decides to use to invest those funds. My main concern is maintaining the integrity of the taxpayers' money. I felt that would be answered in a couple of ways. One, by preferring to have a makeup of the board at least comprise a couple of investment professionals. We know we want to have stakeholders, the guys that are actually the retirees depending on these funds, whether they actually live in Danbury, they live in, as most of the firefighters seem to do in New Milford. These are the guys that actually have a stake in the funds. It's their money. But they may not be, and this is to not cast aspersions at them, they may not be the best people that the city could pick to manage the funds. So I felt that while we need to have some stakeholders, we might want to look at having a couple of investment professionals. That's not in the document. Having said that, I realize that it is up to the mayor and the council ultimately to appoint these people, and that if we were to put that in the document, it would be a non-binding recommendation. So whether it's in the document or not is, at the end of the day, not all that material, but it might be down the road when we have a different administration. They might want to go back and look at the material and say, why did they put this together? Do they really want to maximize income? What do they want to do here? Mm-hmm. And they can go back over the documents and say, at the time, the board felt it was probably best to maintain the integrity of the fund. So I would like to see language like that in there. And conversely, I'd like to see somewhere in the statement that the reason that we're doing this is, and we'll list all the reasons, but the primary reason we're doing this is to hopefully hold on to as much of this money as we can. And those are my two main concerns. Now, as far as sunsetting, again, that goes back to the first thing, integrity of the money. I'm not married to that. If the committee doesn't want to sunset after 5 years, I'm not going to vote against it. But I have to say that without two of the three things, language concerning makeup of the board and something in the statement talking about protecting the funds, at this time I would not be prepared to vote for this. I'd like to see something like that in there. Now, does that mean we've got to meet again? I don't think so. I think you guys could put that language in there, email me a copy, and if that's the case, we could make a motion to approve pursuant to that language being included. I don't think we have to come back here, but those are my concerns.
I don't think we have to come back either,
Yeah.
Paul. In fact, when I saw this a couple of weeks ago, I contacted Les Pinter and asked about the competencies. He said it's really not necessary. That type of language does not go into something like this. So I was satisfied with what he said.
May I address?
Sure.
To the chair.
Mm-hmm.
I think your points are very well taken, Councilman. But I think they are addressed in, maybe not exactly in the fashion that you would prefer, but they are addressed under the investment area, the appointment of the investment manager.
Okay, where are we reading now?
On page 3. There's not just one or two people with investment experience, but a whole team of them. In fact, the intent is to hire investment manager.
At the bottom?
Yeah.
Indemnification of trustee, contributions?
The appointment of an investment manager.
See, I don't-
On page
Oh, that's actually on
Page
page
3.
4.
No,
Might be
I'm-
on it.
On some
I have,
documents, it's page 4.
I'm looking at
Okay.
the older version.
I guess it would depend on how you printed them out, too.
Yeah. The appointment of an investment manager. That's
Okay.
going to be, instead of looking to maybe putting all the weight or the pressure on one or two OPEB board members, we're looking at a whole team of investment managers to give us that kind of advice. And they have all the resources available to them. And of course, they're guided by the prudent investor rule as well.
These would be the people that the city
Would hire.
would hire
Right.
ultimately.
The
But their
board- the board
bosses,
would hire.
their bosses
The-
on the board may not have any experience at all whatsoever with managing money. And that was my point, that we
Well,
should
their
have
bosses
someone on the board.
would include myself.
Sure.
And whoever else is appointed. And that, you know, that could, we don't know that they won't have, but you know that at least one of them will.
You,
And that-
right, the finance
Right.
director, yeah.
But the
Yeah.
board would obviously select whoever that investment manager would be.
If we can continue this discussion, I believe the 5 members of the board would not include you. You would be the 6th member, am I correct? So
Correct.
the 5 members might actually be school teachers, firemen, police, retired.
Or it could be, you know, other professionals.
Sure,
Whoever.
could
whoever
be,
is-
but doesn't have to be. And even if we put the language in here, they don't, even if we were to put language in all 5 are supposed to be investment professionals, the mayor and the council don't have to follow that language. It would simply be a recommendation. But I'd like to see a recommendation in there that at least says that we would be more comfortable having 1 or 2 professionals on the board as well as the director of finance.
Well,
Doesn't mean that the city has to follow it. I'm just saying that this councilman would be more comfortable with that language, as well as the points that Chairwoman Digg had mentioned before. Do you feel better with that, or?
Personally, I think, again, and it wouldn't be up to us,
Correct.
again, through the chair, to answer Councilman Rotolo's question. I think that it is something that would be decided upon, obviously, the mayor and whoever the mayor is and whoever whatever council members are on the council at that time would be the ones deciding that. And I'm sure, you know, you'll be involved as well in that process. So, I don't know that it would, and I think, you know, you said Corporation Council had addressed that before as well.
I spoke to Les about it, and I really understand where he's coming from, Paul, because all of this, you know, of course, all of this is a cycle. So this has to be approved, and the 5 individuals who will make up this board has to be approved by the body. So, and we have to say, you know, all right, all in favor say aye, all in favor
Sure.
say no. So we have to approve their qualifications. And I would think that if there's 21 of us, and if we definitely disapprove that one of them aren't, you know, is not a fiscal manager, I'm sure that we would definitely speak up, definitely. Does it need to be in here? Does it have to be very, very specific? Are you really adamant that it
Yeah,
should
I
be in
guess,
your?
here's the thing. If ultimately these are only recommendations, and they are, they're only recommendations.
this is not. This is a legal document.
Right.
What you're suggesting is I'm sorry,
No,
I'm going
go
out of
ahead,
turn.
go ahead.
No, but please, yeah.
This is a legal document. What you're suggesting is a recommendation.
Right.
That can be done outside of this, and should be done, and is done, in fact, as part of due process. But to put it in this could be viewed to tie the hands of future administrations
Yeah.
or future council members, and that's probably where Les is coming from, and rightfully so.
Right, I guess what I'm saying is that I would like to see language in the document that suggests we protect the funds by including, assuming the council agrees with doing this, a couple of investment professionals on the board. They don't have to do it. But anybody going back 5 or 10 years from now, looking at the document, will say, look, these guys were really concerned about the integrity of the funds. They thought it would be a good idea if there were a couple of investment professionals, or at least one of them did, thought it was a good idea if there were a couple of investment professionals
Mhm.
beyond the staff that will be hired on the board. Did they insist upon it? No, but they recommended it, that's all.
Okay.
Is there so my question would then become, are we against including that kind of language, knowing that it's only a recommendation? Will it be a problem to include that kind of language?
Is that possible? Can we include it in this? Or would you have to go back to your attorney?
I would definitely, if I may just address that, I would definitely go back to Attorney Welsh and see if that's even possible. I don't think I could see that language in a trust agreement, because honestly, this is an agreement that is made and signed off between the city
Mhm.
and the finance director. And the provisions that are outlined in here really deal with that relationship, as well as the duties of a trustee, the duties of the investment manager. I'm not sure where we would even include that language in here.
See, I think that.
When you talk about the board itself. I mean, if anything, you could probably address something like that in the ordinance. However, again, you might be tying the hands of whoever needs to appoint. I mean, the mayor obviously is going to appoint, the council's going to affirm or not, or confirm or not. But you may be tying the hands of those individuals who have to do that. And certainly, when it comes time to appoint those individuals, I think your concerns are valid, and those concerns could be raised at that time. Certainly, I think that would be the point at which we would address those particular issues, you know, the makeup and the background of the board. And if I could just point out briefly, not that this is going to necessarily allay your concerns, but I mean, I serve as counsel to the 1983 pension board, and I'm not completely sure, but I don't think those individuals have an investment background. Not necessarily saying that's you know, the way we want to go, but certainly we didn't make that a requirement on other pension boards, and
each of them have performed very well.
Yeah.
You know, all four of them.
I have a question. Just going back to the minutes of our July meeting, Diane, where it says Attorney Pinter advised that there is no statutory deadline for establishment of the trust and ordinance. However, there are certain steps which must be taken. The ordinance would be adopted first, and within the adoption of the ordinance, authorize the establishment of the trust agreement. Then of that last sentence, it says the common council can designate the qualifications for board members. What does that mean when he says the common council can designate the qualifications for board members?
well, he might have been referring to what I'm saying now, in that when it comes time to designating the board members and appointing them and then confirming them before the council, at that point,
On a person-by-person basis?
we would be reviewing the qualifications
Isn't
of
it
each
kind
person.
of post hoc, though? I mean, if I may, the mayor submits a name, and then it's up to the council to vet, to grill the guy. It's usually the first order of business on the thing, and his family's there, and that's really not the time to do that. That's almost a ceremonial appointment during the long road to get to that point. I'm only suggesting that we include language that recommends a certain level of qualification for instance, do we want Danbury residents on the board? Do we want city retirees on the board?
Mhm.
Yes. I would say yeah, maybe to the first, definitely to the second. Do they have to be Danbury residents?
I think that's a valid point.
You could make the case.
Taxpayers,
Right.
residents, or employees, valid point. But to start stating qualifications.
But none of that is in this
No,
document. We
the
don't have anything about
qualifications-
retirees, we don't have any qualifications
Oh, okay.
at all.
Well,
Some of
there's a
that I think
difference
should be in the
what you're.
document.
Now, there's a difference in what you were saying before versus what you just said. You know, I think what you just said makes a bit more sense. You know, when you're talking about residents, taxpayers, and/or employees, those kind of things, then you're kind of setting some kind of criteria. But if you want to say investment background and all this other stuff, Then, you know, we tried to address those needs with twofold. With, for one thing, appointing the investment manager, which you get a whole team, and there's, you know,
Yep.
it's hard to surpass that kind of expertise, but also the prudent investor.
Okay.
But if the other criteria, you know, hey, you know, that's not an unreasonable, you know, request.
It's also more qualitative, whereas, you know, if you say investment professional, that is a huge gray area. We're talking about someone with 5 years'
Yeah.
experience, someone with 10 years' experience, someone in the public sector, the private sector, someone who used to be an investment manager for a, you know, Fortune 500. I mean, it could go on and on and on. Not to throw up obstacles, but I would have a really tough time even sort of defining what investment professional would consist of.
But Diane, what you're saying, getting back to what Paul had said,
Mhm.
you can't really do the competencies and put it in here, but perhaps you could do that the persons should be a resident of the city, a taxpayer,
Mhm.
and that type of language.
I think that would be much easier to
That's much
incorporate and much easier to define.
Is that something you want included in this, Paul?
Well, I happen to feel that if you spent your life working for the city, even if you don't live in Danbury, you clearly have a say, whether you're working for the city of Danbury or Bardens or GE Capital, you have a say in how the
Vested
retirement
interest.
funds are managed. However, having said that, I think there should be some perks for those who choose to live in the city of Danbury. And maybe one of those perks might be, and it's not up to me to make this decision, but I'm putting it out there, one of those perks might be the ability to sit on one of these boards. I mean, we might want to consider limiting this to residents of the city of Danbury. Having said that, it's true that people can spend their life working and living in Danbury, but upon retirement can move. But it is, I think, something to think about. I think that we could say to new hires, look, you will get your benefits, you will get everything that everybody else gets, but if you choose to live in Danbury, there's a couple of other things that you can take advantage of that you won't be able to if you don't live in the city. It's not my decision to make, but it's something that might be considered. I'm not all that comfortable asking you guys to include that in the language because I'm ambivalent about that to begin with. However, I'm not ambivalent about the people who paid into these retirement funds being the ones who should be on this board, represented on this board. So if you want to include that language and you find that it's, you know, that it's fairly easy to include that language, go ahead. I mean, I assume that we would be in agreement on that. The people on this board should be the ones with a stake in the funds. Are we, do we agree on that?
Shane, any questions or any comments?
Well, yeah, at least to a certain degree, but again, being that there's only 5 other members, and would it hurt the board if there was maybe a better candidate that didn't fit those qualifications? So that, I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, I'm in total agreement that we should have, obviously, the best possible board that you can get, and if that, and maybe what you're suggesting may limit it
Yeah.
a little bit. And you brought up a great point. What if, you know, you live here and you work here, but then you move? We have a lot of retirees that move down south and so forth.
Well, they wouldn't be on the board because they're 800 miles away, but I know what you
No, no,
mean. They
right.
could move to the Lower Fairfield County or something like that. You know?
Right.
And is that a possibility, because is that a requirement in terms of working here in the city? I mean, am I putting too much into this? I mean, you know, if you work, if you work for the city of Danbury, you must live here. Is that anywhere in the language? No. You know, so I don't, I mean, you couldn't put that in a legal document. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't either. I mean, that would be
Yeah.
up to Corporation Council. I do know that we had, at the last meeting, at the previous meeting, we had a council person who was here who was so adamant about having retirees comprise the board that she didn't even want investment professionals because it would take a seat away from a retiree. It's all she wanted. We're not here to speak for herself, but that was the gist of it. She wanted it comprised exclusively of retirees. You gotta have them on there. I mean, I think the language should indicate that we want retirees watching over their own funds, I would think. And you mentioned this 1983 board comprised of lay people. Were those people stakeholders in the funds?
They're current
There you
current
go.
police officers.
Yeah.
They're actually not retirees, but they're current police officers.
I'm going to open this up to the audience, and we have an accountant here. Ben, go ahead, you have the floor.
Thank you, again, through the chair. Let me just take a step back and apologize, I wasn't at the first ad hoc meeting. But currently, the city has already adopted gas 43 and 45, so it's already going to be in a financial statement. The number is anyway.
Mhm.
So the next financial statement that the city issues for June 30th of '07, there will be a line item in there for 43 and 45, right? Incorrect and state that, or did?
Well, we're gonna make a statement to the effect that we are in
Adopting.
the process of adopting.
Right, okay. So currently, the city has not
Depending on the outcome of
elected
this,
to-
we have earmarked some funds for that, yes.
So currently, the city has not elected to adopt this. It's not required yet till June of '08.
No, for the ending fiscal year,
Fiscal year.
June 30th, '08, we
08.
had to have adopted it, yes.
Right, but currently, you can adopt it early if so elected.
Well, it's not really adopting early, it's during this year.
This is June 30th of '07. Okay. So the way I read this, the way I understand it, we have in front of us now two agreements. We have an ordinance to establish a trust.
Right.
And then we have the actual trust document which controls how the money is invested, the do's and don'ts, so to speak. So I'm kind of in favor, just kind of keeping the two separate. So I know one says we deal with the board do's and don'ts, that's a separate issue. And then you have the actual trust document, and the way I read this currently, I think this is okay, the way it's stated. That's here, so I don't think we should really toy with the way this document is written, is currently. But the question goes back to what Councilman Rotella was saying, it goes back to the actual board makeup.
Mhm.
And I know there was discussion to say, well, whose money is this? Well, it's not the employees' money. I'm sorry what you think that, it's not their money. It's the city's money. And the reason why they had gas 43 and 45 was to say to the town and the municipalities, well, how much liability is out there? And that's kind of like a secret number, because no one really knows what is out there. So the gas was created to tell municipalities, well, how much debt is really out there? And currently what, 7 million, 73 million?
So you're about right.
Something about
Yeah.
that, 7?
73. 7 million is the annual,
But what's the total?
73.
$73 million. So really, the financial statements, that's going to, whenever June of '08, it's going to have a liability on it of $73 million. Well, I'm sorry, if you're a finance person, you get a financial statement and sees, oh my God, $73 million on it, your bond rating is going to go right down the tubes. So in order to defray that bond rating, GAF says, well, you know what, create this trust fund, which can help the city to lower that liability. So it's the city's money that we will invest in a trust that we all hope that can make $100 million. So if it ever did that, our liability would be nothing.
Right.
So it's not the employee's money, because if there wasn't a trust fund, which you're not required by GAS 45 to set up, you don't have to do it. You just got to show this liability every year.
Mhm.
But the city elected, you know what, we don't want to show $73 million. We want to reduce this liability, so you created this trust, which is a great idea to do, to try to lower that. So it's in the best interest of the city and this council to come up with the best board members that we could, to come up with the best investments that are out there. So no, we don't want people who do not know what they're doing. So we want the best that are out there that know finances. Because if you get a bad investment and it's not earning the money every year that it's supposed to, well, the actuary is going to come back to the finance director and says, oh, by the way, it's not $7 million you have to put in here annually.
Mhm.
It's $10 million that you got to put in here annually. And there's no way the city budget can do that. So therefore, we're going to be under budgeting or underfunding our trust fund. And there would be no different than the state of Connecticut with their teachers' trust fund, which is underfunded. It's no different than other trust funds if we allow that to occur. So it is in the best interest to have the best people on this board so we can do this. Whether it be, I agree, it's nice to have city residents on here because in reality, it is their money. You know, the city ultimately has to pay $73 million. Whether it's this council or next council, they have to budget this in here one way or another. So the way they could do this is they can take this $73 million and stretch it over a long period of time. It's like an annuity. If I can put $7 million in this fund, and every year, 8, 10, 15, 20, and then as these people start retiring, there's enough cash in this trust fund to pay these benefits. Otherwise, it has to come out of current funding. And we all know we don't want to raise our mill rate. We want to keep it as stable as we possibly can take it. So I agree. It's nice to have city residents on here, but if they're not qualified, no, I would disagree. So if there could be language in here, some point in the ordinance, not the trust, in the
So-
ordinance, that can state that it could be suggested to have a finance background would be preferred.
So that's the preference statement. We, ideally, these are the ideal, maybe have a preference statement without, without specifying.
Who?
You just say the best qualified people with a preference of being a city resident, taxpayer, blah, 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 and leave it at that. And, something like that. And that way, that's a suggestion without tying any hands. It's a preference statement rather than a recommendation or anything else.
And that would be,
Is that suitable?
Is that suitable to you, Paul?
Does that work?
Absolutely, that's all that I was looking for, a recommendation, a direction that the document points the council in and points. Our time here is limited. There will be at some point a new administration, there will be at some point a new council, but whoever, I can make this one prediction, whoever comes after us will insist upon direction and control. And that's all that I'm asking Corporation Council to
Okay.
give them. That's all.
Yeah.
Just to amplify Ben's comments, I'm aware that it's the city's money and actually, truth be known, it's the taxpayers' money. But these are liabilities that we have essentially, that we owe essentially future retirees in the city of Danbury. While the $5 is in my pocket right now, I actually owe it to somebody else, and at some point, I'm gonna have to give it to them. So yeah, it's true that the money is the cities and the taxpayers, but at some point it will be transferred to these people. And I think that those people who will ultimately be the beneficiaries of the money should have some say in how it is managed. But they should be guided by not only the finance director and the people that they ultimately hire, but by a couple of people on the board who have a pretty good idea of the kinds of shenanigans that money managers have been known to occasionally, to their detriment, everybody else is get involved in,
Okay,
to
let's-
avoid some of these pitfalls.
All right.
But yeah,
Okay.
put it in the document in a non-binding fashion, in the ordinance, that's fine. Council wants to accept it and act on it, great. If they don't, well, then they can answer the taxpayers and retirees. But it's in there, and if they wanted to know what we thought, that's it. That's all.
All right, so David and Diane, you will be adding the language here, and that's to the ordinance. And you will be putting it under number B?
Yes, actually, if I may just give you a copy
Okay.
of, this has not been amended, but this is a copy of the most recent ordinance that was emailed to you, I think, a couple of weeks ago. If you want to just take a look at that.
And shall we now or not decide if we want to include language about residency in here? Or do we want to avoid that entirely?
I personally feel that we shouldn't include residents.
Should not.
That's just
Yeah.
a little, I don't know, it could get a little sticky.
Okay.
I agree.
Okay, all right. So we're all set with the ordinance, and we don't have any questions on the trust agreement? Is that what I'm hearing from the committee?
I was fine with that, yeah.
Shay?
Yep.
Okay, all right, Diane?
Sorry,
I'm sorry.
Dave and I were trying to see if we could come up with some language that might help with to resolve the issue and to see what would best fit into Section B of the ordinance.
Okay.
Do you
So.
want to make a motion pending modification of Section B line, whatever, I mean, you know.
And Diane can
I
always
trust
get
these
back.
guys, and they can, you know, we can
Yes.
do a couple of emails back and forth. If we can do that, in your opinion, without having to have another ad hoc.
Yeah, I think we could do that. I think we can do
You
that
don't need to
without.
draft this tonight. It's,
Okay.
you know, I'm
And
comfortable
it's only
with.
1 or 2 sentences, correct?
Yeah, I think it actually would be. I mean, we could add, I think, at the most 2 sentences to Section B to address that particular issue.
All right, well, great. Any more questions or any more comments? If not, are we ready for the motion?
Yes, thank you. One quick question through the chair to Corporation Counsel, just to confirm. Obviously, this is going to go to a public hearing first,
Yes,
correct?
yes, that will go to a public hearing first.
That's, so then on.
Not the trust, no.
No, what we'll do is.
Just the ordinance.
If the ordinance, but the ordinance, of course, incorporates by reference the trust agreement.
I'm gonna think about the sunsetting. I may bring that up in a couple of months if I'm here, and I may not. I don't know. I may wanna just think about that. We don't, that language does not need to be included now.
Okay.
Okay.
Different ordinance.
So that we can take that off the table is what I'm saying.
Okay,
That's
good.
not an issue.
All right.
But I would still like some language in there that is, perhaps in the ordinance, that impresses upon the future council that that preserving these funds is a priority. You may feel it's already in there, and maybe it is, and maybe we can go back and forth on that in email, because I did notice in this part, you talked about best practices. And that was heartening to me, because what you're saying is that, look, you guys can leverage these funds, but you have to do it in a way that's considered to be proper.
Absolutely,
Right, yeah,
absolutely.
right.
I would say,
So now, Paul, are you saying add something else in terms?
No, I'm not. I'm simply saying that when we go back and forth on these emails, that maybe we don't need to put that language in there, but I would like the thrust of this document to say that we are doing this to make some money, but we're also doing this to preserve the funds.
if I may, through the chair, just address that. I would take a close look at at attachment B, the prudent investor rule, which is a Connecticut statute that basically talks about the standard of care, what the prudent investor rule means.
Right. No, I saw that, and
Yeah.
that's good, because that hadn't been in here at the last meeting.
Yes, and that's incorporated by
Right.
reference.
And when I
into
saw
the
this, okay, these guys
Yeah.
really know what they're doing, they're putting this, and this is apparently legal terminology that I'm not
Yes.
familiar with,
Yeah.
but I get the gist of it, and that's good. It offers some protection,
Mm-hmm.
and it offers some direction to the future. I'm satisfied with that.
Okay.
That's all.
Okay. And also just want to point out that Section 5.4 provides for an establishment of a funding policy.
Okay, where are we with
That's,
page?
that's on my page 4, it's Section 5.4.
Establishment of funding policy, yeah.
Yeah.
Should it be the city or the commission, the board?
This is the city shall establish and carry out a funding policy.
We have to.
And you pretty much have set that already, you
Mhm.
know, when you've committed an additional 1.2 million above the already 4.2 million.
Okay. Are we ready for the motion? Mr. Nagashaf?
Thank you. Well, I would like to make a motion to recommend to the Common Council that it adopt the other post-employment benefit trust ordinance with the changes stated by the Director of Finance and Corporation Counsel in Section B of the ordinance, together with the City of Danbury other post-employment benefits trust agreement, pending a public hearing.
Need a second?
Diane, is that,
I need a second then.
Second.
All right, any discussion? Any discussion? Mr. Rutolo?
Diane, are you comfortable with that motion?
Yes, I'm comfortable with the motion.
Okay.
Yep.
Great, good. Any other discussion, any other comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries. Need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. Adjourn.
You,
Okay, thank you.
okay, good.
Councilman, there's a, if you have any questions about some of the language in there, it's actually much more with some of the spelling out, some of the
Yeah, yeah.
stuff on there. You know, that